So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Spark Space here at Burlington Electric Department. I'm Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanak. I'm joined with some very special guests, which we'll introduce in just a moment. Climate is one of my top priorities in my first term as mayor. And with the broader climate work happening in the city, the Net Zero Energy Roadmap represents a significant and ambitious goal of eliminating fossil fuel use for heating, for building energy needs, and for ground transportation. We pursue that work, primarily through electrification, helping Burlington residents and businesses and nonprofit organizations switch to heat pumps, geothermal, electric vehicles. Hold on. Excuse me. You know, this time of year there is always, is this for me? Okay, it's not like, okay. Delicious tap water from the city of Burlington, yeah. That's right. I swear, this time of year there's like magical allergies that only affect me when there's no leaves out yet. Okay, let me go back to where I was. We pursue this work primarily through electrification, helping Burlington residents and businesses and nonprofit organizations switch to heat pumps, geothermal, electric vehicles, electric buses, and so much more. Our community can take pride in the strong programs and incentives Burlington Electric maintains and grows to support customers and ratepayers to making these changes. Importantly, we do this work with an eye towards always affordability and equity, including BED offering enhanced incentives for low-income qualified customers, and providing an energy assistance program to discount bills for income qualified customers. Today, we are sharing the latest data from 2024 about how we are doing on reducing emissions in our city. General Manager Darren Springer will run through the details of our 2024 results in a few moments. But I want to share that it is very helpful to have this data be current. As you may know, the state's emissions inventory was last updated in the year 2021. And of course, the state has a variety of complex data sources to pull from to create such an inventory, whereas we are tracking two key sectors of emissions in one city. But knowing how we are doing and being able to continue to adjust and innovate in the service of reaching our goals is truly essential. I am pleased to see that we continue to make progress in 2024 and continue to reduce greenhouse gas emissions relative to prior years. With so much chaos in the federal administration right now, and with efforts underway to freeze climate programs and grants, including our own EV charging grant for BED, local leadership is more critical than ever on climate. My administration will continue to lead, and we know that climate action is just not mitigation work as represented in the Net Zero Energy Roadmap. We have great work underway in the city on resilience and also adaptation. And I'm looking forward to working with the newly convened Climate Advisors Group to examine the inventory of programs and work and actions already underway across the city. And we'll explore affordable ways to fill existing gaps as we continue to be a climate-forward city and community. I am also really excited, not so excited as my remarks say, I'm really excited to have two environmentally conscious Edmunds Elementary students here with us today. You might be able to tell who they are up here, and it's not me. And it's not this guy. At the State of the City address on Monday, just this week, we shared a new photo display of young people across our city on the walls of Contes Auditorium and elsewhere in City Hall. This was to remind us of who we do this work for. We do this climate work to protect a sustainable and livable future for the kids today and the kids tomorrow here in the city of Burlington. I truly appreciate Julian and Harris for joining us today and for caring so much about our environment and our city. You'll be hearing from them shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, hi, good afternoon. I'm Darren Springer, General Manager with Burlington Electric, and I'm just going to share a few details about our 2024 Net Zero Energy Roadmap update. The top line result that we're certainly pleased to share is represented on this chart here that you may be able to see, is that for the two sectors that we track, which are thermal, which is buildings, fossil fuel use in buildings, and ground transportation, our emissions are down 19% since 2018. And the roadmap was launched in 2019. We've used 2018 as the baseline. As the mayor said, the roadmap's an incredibly ambitious target by using 2030 as a goal point. So what we also have represented on the chart with the yellow line is the science-based target from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which from 2019 to 2030 said that in order to preserve a pathway towards only 1.5 degrees Celsius change in temperature, we need to reduce CO2 emissions by approximately 48% over that period of time. And while we're not on the very ambitious lower line there for the Net Zero Energy 2030, we are tracking reasonably well with the IPCC target. So one of the lessons, at least for me, is by setting an incredibly ambitious goal and throwing everything we can at it, everything from revenue bond financing with our net zero energy revenue bonds, the incentives for electrification that the mayor mentioned, policies, including rental weatherization policies, carbon fee policies, new energy benchmarking policies that are just coming into effect, and working with partners in the community and working with residents. We may not be on that lower line, but we're actually doing reasonably well when it comes to the science-based targets and ahead very much of the state's pace and the federal pace when it comes to some of these key sectors. So the reason we track thermal and ground transportation is they collectively make up the bulk of Vermont's emissions, roughly 70 to 80%, depending on the year. And so they're also two of the biggest sources of emissions in Burlington. And when you look at natural gas, which is the thermal fuel that most Burlingtonians use, we've reduced natural gas consumption in Burlington 18.1% between 2018 and 2024. The state over the same period has reduced natural gas use 9.4%. So we're seeing almost double the reduction in Burlington that we're seeing statewide with the same fuel. Also, when it comes to ground transportation, we're tracking gasoline use and diesel use. Over that period of 2018 to 2024, the state saw gasoline use down about 8% and diesel down about 4%. We're down combined 14.8%. So we're seeing, again, in Burlington, a pace that's even ahead of Vermont, and of course, Vermont is ahead of the federal pace. Some of the things that are contributing to success that we saw in this year's roadmap update, electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles. We now have almost 1,300 registered electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles in the city of Burlington. That represents almost 6% of the vehicle fleet, and that's not sales, that's actually the fleet as it stands right now. And that's about double, at least, the national figure for EV and plug-in hybrid registration. So that's important. We are seeing fewer Burlingtonians actually having individual vehicles, light-duty vehicles. That's been down since we started tracking. So more people may be able to use transit, walk, bike, get by with a fewer number of cars. So that helps us as well. On the more challenging side of things, we're seeing that vehicle miles traveled, which were down during the pandemic, are starting to rebound back up. And that's not a Burlington phenomenon. That's happening nationally. That's happening in the state. That's something that we'll need to watch as we go forward. And the other piece to be aware of is we are seeing warmer winters. So as we see warmer winters, you would expect to use less natural gas. That's contributing at least a portion of the reductions that we're seeing here in Burlington and in the state. And we're certainly at risk if there was a very cold winter. You would likely see some rebound in emissions in the thermal sector. But that said, we have about 3,000 heat pumps deployed now in Burlington. We're working on geothermal systems in a variety of contexts. So we're trying to lock in those technology changes that help us guard against any future rise in emissions and keep us on the path that we want to be on. So glad to provide more information. We'll be briefing our electric commission this evening in this space and our city council on Monday. But I want to turn it to two special guests with us, Julian and Harris, who are 4th and 3rd graders respectively at Edmunds. And Mike, we're going to grab the little step stool here and welcome you both to come share some comments.
Hello, my name is Harris Tetzel.
And my name is Julian Chandler. We'd like to speak today about reducing greenhouse gases.
As Edmunds Elementary students and citizens of Burlington, it's important that we keep up this good work.
We're here today because we're concerned about our future.
So our vision is to work towards a more electric and fossil fuel-free community.
Our greenhouse gas pollution problem is slowly going down thanks to electric cars, windmills, and solar panels.
With these technologies, we can speed up the downfall of carbon emissions, creating a better future for generations to come. Thank you for your time. Let's keep up the great work.
Thank you both. And I know that the mayor and I and Julian and Harris are glad to answer any questions that you might have.
With a lot of uncertainty on the federal level when it comes to funding, as you mentioned, for things like climate change focused policies and initiatives, is that impacting your decision at all to ramp up sort of these local initiatives and rebates that you all are doing?
You want?
I'll start, and then we'll put this back in case they need it. I will fall off of that with my heels on. So as I spoke at the State of the City address on Monday, and I've been talking about in general a response to the Trump administration and the very concerning and chaotic decisions that are coming out of DC with freezing funding. And it's not even just freezing funding. We are often seeing the dramatic impacts of the firing of so many federal employees who are critical extensions for local government, for administering funds to releasing, just being a resource half the time on many aspects around city government. But for us, especially when it comes to climate issues, as I said before, Monday night and here, we are going to continue to be a climate forward city. We're going to try to continue to push ourselves to be leaders in this critical work, not only for folks who are living here in Burlington now and will hopefully continue to live in Burlington in the future, but this is so critical. So we have been very fortunate, given the strong financial status of Burlington Electric Department, to start to figure out how to be nimble and pivot where we can to make sure we continue to find the resources needed to advance critical climate work, especially around electrification work. And we'll do that as much as we can, but these are local resources, and we will at some point need to be making different decisions in other regards, especially other departments. So I just want to make sure it's not easy for us to pivot, but we will around our critical priorities, and climate work in particular is one of those 3 core priorities right now. If you want to add anything, Brian?
Yeah, I would just add that the policies we're seeing come out of DC are incredibly unhelpful to the effort we're making to reduce emissions. It's the grants that are frozen that the mayor mentioned. The tariffs are going to be very impactful in a negative way to a lot of our different, technologies that we're trying to help people access in terms of affordability, in terms of our relationship with Canada, which is important for the New England region from an energy perspective. And I think it's it's incumbent on us to do everything we can locally from a policy standpoint, from an investment standpoint. Burlington Electric is positioned to help customers if the federal government, further retrenches in terms of incentives. We're prepared for that. I think the other kind of just hopeful thing that we have here in Burlington that we don't currently have in DC is we have a really broad consensus in our community and in our elected officials that this is an important priority and that we want to make investments, we want to work on it. That's not something that I take for granted, because at the federal level we're seeing just such a deep retrenchment from even being able to acknowledge climate change, much less put the work towards reducing emissions. So I think it's part of our secret sauce in Burlington is that we do have a community and elected leadership, mayor, city council, on down that is invested in making these choices and making these technologies affordable and available.
I have a similar question, just a clarifying question from part of your address on Monday, Mayor. You had mentioned in the same paragraph where you talked about the Trump administration freezing funds that would support EV charging infrastructure, the $20 million net zero energy revenue bond advanced last fall. So is there a connect there? Is that revenue bond being directly affected, or is that locked in? What's the situation with that?
Sure. I'm going to pass this very quickly to Darren on the technical side of this one, but local voters passed that bond back in November in a special election for the for local resourcing. So that bonding is our local resources being able to be leveraged for capital and other needs here at Burlington Electric Department. That is really a very important expression of support, as Darren was just saying, around the values of this community, around where we know we need to do our investments to make sure that we as a community are moving forward on our climate goals. And that is very helpful, enabling us to be able to do some of this pivot. But in terms of technically what we might be drawing from that bond or not, as we try to figure out what we can navigate, I'll let Darren get a little more technical if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, happy to. Thank you, Mayor. So the Net Zero Energy Revenue Bond is investing in EV charging stations. The new one will, and the current one is as well. So we have right outside here at 585 Pine, at the downtown Marketplace Garage, and now at the waterfront. We have 3 fast chargers, first 3 in our public charging network funded through the revenue bond, as well as a number of level 2 chargers. What was happening with the grant is the revenue bond was providing important matching funds for the grant, and the grant was going to accelerate our progress so that we would have up to 200 new EV charging stations. If we can't access the grant, we'll still make investments in EV charging. They're not going to be as many that we can fund, and the rollout is going to be at a slower pace, unfortunately. So we're doing everything we can to fight for that grant, and we're obviously swept up in a situation a number of communities and entities are where the grants are not being accessed, and they're frozen, and there's litigation happening. So we're going to do everything we can to access it, but either way, we're going to invest in EV charging through the revenue bond, certainly.
Do you have any comments on the bonds? Okay, I want to make sure. I want to be inclusive. Yeah. Anything else?
Yes, so looking at this chart for a lot of our viewers who, don't really understand the nitty-gritty of this all and what you all do on a day-to-day basis, how do these numbers and this chart translate to real-life impacts for people just out and about with their daily lives?
So the one thing I would say first from a climate change perspective is if the entire country emissions looked like this chart, we'd be well on our way to meeting the Paris climate goals in the United States. And we're historically the largest emitter, and we are, I think, currently the second largest emitter based on current numbers. But on a historical basis, in terms of who's contributed to climate change, we're certainly at the top of that list. So what this demonstrates, at least kind of more broadly in this very challenging time, is it is possible to make progress in these key emission sectors to see reductions, and we're doing it in a way that's economically beneficial. I'll use electric vehicles as an example. If we help a customer with an incentive switch to an electric vehicle, that's great for the climate, certainly. It's also good in terms of keeping our dollars local. Almost $0.75 of a dollar that you spend with us stays in the Vermont economy. You spend $1 at the gas station, about $0.75 of that dollar leaves the Vermont economy. So right there is a real world important buy local impact. It also is good for our ratepayers because we're able to use our system more efficiently. We have a number of customers signed up for off-peak charging rates. So if you've got an electric vehicle and you're charging during times when energy is cheap and it's not peak and it's plentiful, that helps us make our system overall more efficient. You can think of it like a factory that's running on a 3rd shift instead of only running 2 shifts. You're getting more production. That's what we're getting out of the grid when those electric vehicles are charging off-peak. We're getting more productive use of an asset that we've invested in. For the customer, they are going to pay less than they would pay for gasoline. So they're going to pay, it could be $1 a gallon equivalent if they're charging off peak, or maybe $1.75 if they're charging at our public stations to fuel their electric vehicle. They're going to have much fewer in maintenance costs than they would have with a gasoline vehicle. And they're going to be protecting the environment, including having less local air pollution. So this can feel a little distant in some ways, but if you take it to that level of, we're demonstrating progress that if other, parts of the country could also do, we would, as a country, be meeting some of our key climate goals. That's important. We're able to keep more dollars in our local economy. That's important. And we're helping our customers be able to have a cleaner, cheaper fuel and do it in a way that's beneficial for the environment. So to me, that's really where we kind of have the best outcome is we can say, hey, this is economically beneficial and it's helping the environment. Why wouldn't we want to do that?
One of you has an electric vehicle at home, right? Yeah. So you've ridden in an EV vehicle, right? So what we're talking about is being able to plug in more places in the city of Burlington, which will help you get around town in your EV vehicle, right? I want to make this participatory. Yeah. Anything else?
Just real quick, any updates on the plant negotiations? Anything that's just
I'm glad you all listened. It was glad. This is like the test. Do you want to give that update on?
Yeah. So I would just say that we had a 6-month window initially for the negotiations that runs through April 15th. And, we'll be kind of sharing more updates we get closer there. But I think we're going to be looking to extend that window for a few more months. We've had really productive discussions with our joint owners. I think we're going to need a little bit more time to kind of figure out if we have an agreement that we can bring forward. So I expect that we'll share that more formally, but we're looking to have a couple more months of negotiations, which was available in the agreement. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.